Hello, everyone. Welcome to English with Podcast. I'm Emma, and I'm here with my colleague Alex. Today, we're going to talk about something super useful for anyone living in or visiting an English-speaking country, how to navigate public transport.
That's right, Emma. Public transportation can be a bit daunting, especially in a new country or city. But don't worry, we've got you covered with some essential tips and vocabulary to make your journey smoother.
Exactly. So, Alex, shall we start with some general tips for using public transport?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I'd say planning your journey in advance is crucial. Most cities now have apps or websites where you can check routes, schedules, and even real-time updates.
That's so true. I always tell my students to download the local transport app as soon as they arrive in a new city. It's a lifesaver. Another tip I'd add is to get a transit card if you're staying for more than a few days. It's usually cheaper than buying individual tickets.
Great point, Emma. Transit cards often go by different names. Oyster card in London, Opal card in Sydney, or MetroCard in New York, for example. It's worth learning the local term.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about some specific vocabulary related to public transport. Alex, what are some key terms people should know?
Well, there are quite a few. Let's start with types of transport. Bus, train, subway, or underground tube in the UK, tram, and ferry are common ones. Then we have words like fare for the price of your ticket, route for the path the vehicle takes, and schedule for the timetable.
Don't forget peak hours or rush hour. That's when public transport is busiest, usually in the morning and evening when people are going to or coming from work.
Right. And off-peak would be the opposite, times when it's less crowded. Oh, and transfer or interchange is important too. It's when you need to change from one line or type of transport to another.
Great examples. I think it's also useful to know phrases like, does this bus go to, or which platform for? These can be really helpful when you need to ask for directions.
Definitely. And don't forget announcements you might hear, like mind the gap in the London Underground, warning you about the space between the train and the platform.
Oh, that reminds me of cultural differences and etiquette. Alex, what are some important things to remember about public transport etiquette in English-speaking countries?
Well, one big one is queuing or lining up. In many English-speaking countries, especially the UK, forming an orderly line while waiting for the bus or train is very important.
Yes, and once you're on board, it's polite to offer your seat to elderly passengers, pregnant women, or anyone who seems to need it more than you do.
Absolutely. Another thing to remember is to keep your voice down if you're having a conversation or on the phone. Many people use their commute time to read or relax, so it's considerate to keep noise to a minimum.
That's a great point. Oh, and in many places, it's a big no-no to eat smelly foods on public transport. A quick snack might be okay, but a full meal might annoy your fellow passengers.
Right you are, Emma. Now let's talk about some common challenges people face when using public transport and how to overcome them.
Good idea. I think one common issue is not knowing when to get off the bus or train. My tip for this is to always track your journey on your phone's map app, or don't be afraid to ask the driver or a fellow passenger for help.
That's a good one. Another challenge can be understanding announcements, especially if they're in a strong local accent or if there's a lot of background noise.
Oh yes. I always tell my students to pay attention to the electronic displays if available, or to ask a fellow passenger if they didn't catch the announcement.
Excellent advice. One more challenge could be dealing with delays or cancellations. It's always good to have a backup plan and to allow extra time for your journey, especially if you're going somewhere important like a job interview.
Absolutely, Alex. Public transport isn't always perfect, so a bit of patience goes a long way. And remember, if you're ever unsure about anything, most people are happy to help if you ask politely.
That's right. Just a simple, excuse me, could you help me with, can open a lot of doors, sometimes literally.
Laugh's good one, Alex. Well, we've covered quite a lot today. Shall we do a quick recap for our listeners?
Sure thing. We've talked about general tips like planning your journey and getting a transit card. We've covered essential vocabulary and phrases, discussed cultural etiquette, and addressed common challenges.
Perfect summary. Remember, everyone using public transport is not just about getting from A to B. It's also a great way to practice your English and experience the local culture.
Couldn't agree more. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're all part of the learning process.
Exactly. Well, that's all we have time for today. We hope you found these tips helpful. Thanks for listening to English with Podcast.
Thanks, everyone.